and because it's linked to the poor oral and the overall patient's well-being and the nutritional status of the patient. So basically the leishmaniasis associated with malnutrition, population displacement, poor housing, a weak immune system, and lack of financial resources. Basically, it's linked to the environmental changes as well: deforestation, building of dams, irrigation schemes, and urbanization. An estimated 700,000 to 1 million new cases and some 26,000 to 65,000 deaths occur annually because of leishmaniasis. Only a small fraction of those infected by leishmania parasites will eventually develop the disease. Not in 100% of cases who acquire parasites, if they have good immune mechanism, they will not develop clinically active disease. Okay, leishmaniasis is a basically neglected disease. Globally important but neglected, affecting approximately 2 million people every year. For most people, infection results in a slow to heal skin ulcers. In others, the parasites targets the visceral organs like liver, spleen, and bone marrow, leading to over 70,000 deaths annually. Leishmaniasis, known by several other names in different parts of the world, like Kala-Azar, black fever, sandfly disease, dum-dum fever, and Espandia. This is the picture of showing sandfly. Sandfly is an important vector, and that does play a very important role in the transmission of the leishmania parasites into the person who is acquiring that disease. Sandfly is a vector for leishmaniasis. Okay. As we discussed, we have three different types of leishmaniasis, but these type of leishmaniasis are prevalent in the particular areas of the world. That's why the diagnosis of leishmaniasis depending upon also the geographical distribution and from which part of the world the case is coming to you or consulting to a physician. Visceral leishmaniasis is more common in Bangladesh, Brazil, India, Nepal, and Sudan. Cutaneous leishmaniasis is common in Afghanistan, Brazil, and Iran. Mucocutaneous leishmaniasis is more common in Brazil and Peru, and post-Kala-Azar dermal leishmaniasis is endemic to India and Sudan. There's one more categorization of leishmaniasis depending upon the geographical distribution. If you open the book, so there's terminology old world leishmaniasis and new world leishmaniasis. It all depends upon from which area of the world the case is coming to you. Old world leishmaniasis is more prevalent in Africa, Asia, Middle East, and Mediterranean and Indian areas. And the most common types of old world leishmaniasis is cutaneous and visceral disease. The new world leishmaniasis occurs in Central and South America, and the common types are cutaneous, mucocutaneous, and visceral disease. Okay, there are 20 different species of leishmania parasites up till now identified. So here we discuss the leishmania species infecting humans. In New World cutaneous, mucocutaneous, and diffuse leishmaniasis, the most common species are Leishmania mexicana and Leishmania amazonensis. And the second complex is Brasiliensis complex, Leishmania brasiliensis, Leishmania panamensis, and guiensis. In the Old World cutaneous and diffuse leishmaniasis, the species involved are Leishmania tropica, Leishmania major, Leishmania ethiopia, and Leishmania infecta. In visceral leishmaniasis, the species which are causing leishmaniasis are Leishmania donovani, Leishmania infantum, and Leishmania chagas. Okay, leishmaniasis is basically caused by a protozoa parasites, and it has approximately 20 different species. Over 90 sandfly species are known to transmit leishmania parasites. There are three main forms of the disease, as we discussed already. Now we'll discuss these forms one by one. The first is visceral leishmaniasis. It's also known as Kala-Azar. It's a fatal if left untreated in over 95% of the cases. It is characterized by irregular bouts of fever, weight loss, enlargement of the spleen, liver, and anemia. Most cases occur in Brazil, East Africa, and in Southeast Asia. Estimated 50,000 to 90,000 new cases of visceral leishmaniasis occur worldwide each year, out of which only an estimated 25 to 45% are reported worldwide to WHO. In 2017, more than 95% of new cases reported to WHO, and that occurred in countries like third world countries mostly, or the countries with the more poor population, like Bangladesh, Brazil, China, Ethiopia, India, Kenya, Nepal, Somalia, South Sudan, and Sudan. Then we come to cutaneous leishmaniasis. This is the most common form of leishmaniasis, and it causes skin lesions, mainly ulcers, and that mostly on the exposed parts of the body, like arms, face, because that is easily accessible by the sandfly. That is an important vector in the transmission of leishmania parasites. These ulcers leave lifelong scars and serious disability or stigma in the patients who are acquiring the disease. About 95% of cutaneous leishmaniasis cases occur in America, the Mediterranean basin, the Middle East, and Central Asia. It is estimated that between 600,000 to 1 million new cases occur worldwide. Okay, these are the pictorial of the ulcers of cutaneous leishmaniasis. As you can see, this is ulcer which giving an appearance of volcanic eruption. The base is like smooth, but the edges are rolled down and bit elevated from the base of the ulcer. And that's why this is the most common appearance, giving an appearance of a volcanic eruption. That volcano has erupted, and this is the residual form of that volcanic eruption. Okay, the most common leishmaniasis get diagnosed clinically depending upon the areas that are more prevalent, patient coming to that area that is more prevalent for the disease, and the appearance of the ulcer. Mostly diagnosed clinically on the first look of the ulcer, because the ulcer is typically giving rolled edges with the clear centrally dipped base, and that is giving the appearance of the volcanic eruption has taken place in the ulcer. Okay, and the mostly ulcer is on the exposed parts of the body. Okay, mucocutaneous leishmaniasis. It's a partial or total destruction of mucous membrane of the nose, mouth, and throat. Over 90% of mucocutaneous leishmaniasis cases occur in Brazil, Ethiopia, and Peru. Okay, here we'll just give an overview of the life cycle of the leishmania parasites. You have already done with the life cycle in the previous lectures as well. We'll just give an overview. Leishmaniasis is transmitted by the bite of female phlebotomine sandflies. The sandflies inject the infective stage promastigotes during the blood meals. This is the pictorial presentation. Basically, the first stage, sandfly takes a blood meal and inject promastigote stage into the skin of the host. Then promastigotes are phagocytized by macrophages, and these promastigotes transform into amastigotes inside the macrophages. Amastigotes multiply in cells, including macrophages of various tissues. Then again, if the sandfly takes a blood meal from the infected person, these amastigotes transfer to the sandfly again, and these macrophages containing amastigotes transferred again to the sandfly, and then in the sandfly, the ingestion of pesticide cells burst, and amastigotes transform into promastigote stage in the midgut of the sandfly. And now these promastigotes migrate to proboscis of the sandfly, and sandfly is ready again to transmit this parasites to another person to spread the disease. Okay. Okay, clinical manifestation. The incubation period of this disease varies from 3 weeks to 100 weeks. Patient can acquire parasites and will not manifest clinically active disease even the 100 weeks after. Okay, or any time that the immune response gets weakened, the disease can be clinically active. Okay, that's why incubation period varies from 3 weeks to 100 plus weeks. The most common clinical manifestations are low-grade fever, weight loss, hepatosplenomegaly, bone marrow hyperplasia, anemia, leukopenia, cachexia, hypergonioglobulinemia, epistaxis, proteinuria, and hematuria. Okay. This is also a life cycle of leishmania we have discussed, but in this is a multi-cyclic or multi-host involved. That's why this parasites can be transmitted to the dogs, jackals, mouses, rodents, and humans. Okay. And okay. The symptoms and pathology associated with leishmaniasis results from the amastigotes killing the host cells. There are many different diseases caused by leishmania. In some diseases, the amastigotes do not spread beyond the site of vector's bite. This results in a cutaneous leishmaniasis that can cause known as oriental sore, Jericho boil, Aleppo boil, or belly boil that often heals spontaneously. In other instances, the amastigotes may spread to the visceral organs like liver and spleen, resulting in visceral leishmaniasis that is known as Kala-Azar or Dumble fever, or to the mucous membrane of the mouth and the nose, resulting in mucocutaneous leishmaniasis, spondia, or Pitta. If left untreated, these later diseases results in high rates of mortality. This is mucocutaneous leishmaniasis, and this is cutaneous leishmaniasis. Okay. Okay. Cutaneous leishmaniasis Cutaneous leishmaniasis is the most commonly caused by Leishmania major. Causes a moist, cutaneous, ulcer-like lesion at the site of the bite. It starts as a papule that in acute course, like in 1 to 3 weeks, with early ulceration and a surrounding zone of inflammation that usually heals in 2 months to a year, leaving a depressed, unpigmented scar and lasting immunity. Like this is the ulcer with the rolled surrounded edges giving appearance of volcanic eruption. This is also ulcer, cutaneous leishmaniasis. Pictures of cutaneous leishmaniasis. Okay, New World cutaneous leishmaniasis is most commonly caused by Leishmania mexicana. The ulcer usually heals spontaneously in a few months. However, when the bite occurs on the ear, it results in chronic lesions known as Kichlior's ulcer because the cartilage of the ear pinna is poorly vascularized and the immune response is weak. In 40% of the cases, the result is mutilation of the pinna found principally in Central America and Mexico, where it occurs in the forest, dwelling people who harvest latex from the chicle trees to be used in the manufacturing of chewing gum. And in Belize, it is also known as bay soaps. Okay, and this look, it's called like it's the Kichlior's ulcer on the ear pinna. Same here, and it causes the mutilation of the whole pinna. Okay, again, this is cutaneous leishmaniasis, localization site in which the sandfly bite occurs. The amastigotes multiply in the reticular endothelial system of the skin. The incubation period spans from a period of day up to several months. If kept clean, the sores will heal spontaneously within 2 months to 1 year. However, these sores often are the site of secondary infections and can result in permanent disfiguration. Once the infection has been cleared, the host is immune to reinfection. In some regions, residents inoculate their children in a site normally not visible to protect the child from getting disfiguring scars later in life. Okay. In the cutaneous leishmaniasis, we have typical cutaneous lesions appearing on volcanic eruption and atypical cutaneous lesions like multiple small nodular pustules are looking here. This is atypical cutaneous lesions of leishmaniasis. Okay, in mucocutaneous leishmaniasis, inoculation of promastigotes by the bite of a sandfly results in a small red skin papule that is itchy and ulcerates. In 1 to 4 weeks, like cutaneous leishmaniasis, this ulcer usually heals spontaneously within 6 to 15 months. However, there is metastatic spread of the poor mastigotes from the site of the bite by the lymphatics, and the disease is called spondia. The metastatic lesions involve the nasal and buccal mucosa, and causing destruction and malformation of the cartilage and the soft tissues. The ulceration can involve the nose, pharynx, hard palate, lips. Invasion of the larynx may result in a loss of speech. In Brazil, 1/3 of the spondia cases are in children and may take many years for it to spread from initial site of the bite. Death may occur from secondary infections or respiratory complications. Okay, visceral leishmaniasis. Leishmania donovani causes the classic type found in India. This is a metastatic disease. Rarely is a lesion seen at the site of the bite, and parasites are only occasionally seen in blood, but are present in the spleen and lymph nodes. The incubation period is 1 to 4 months. The disease is characterized by fever, anemia, splenomegaly, wasting, imbalance of serum proteins, and hyperpigmentation of the skin. The death rate is very high if left untreated. Leishmania infantum causes Mediterranean form of Kala-Azar and has dogs, jackal, and foxes as reservoirs. Humans are accidental hosts. This is a picture of visceral leishmaniasis or Kala-Azar, showing weak cachexia appearance of the patient, severe weight loss, but abdominal distension because of massive hepatosplenomegaly. Look at this. In Kala-Azar, typically there's massive splenomegaly, and the spleen is coming just beyond the umbilicus in the right corner of the right flank area. Okay, and this is the most common cause of infective cause of massive splenomegaly. Okay, this is also a pictorial appearance showing visceral leishmaniasis, hepatomegaly, and the severe massive splenomegaly. See, the spleen is enlarged all in the abdomen. Okay. Now here we discussed Leishmania donovani group to a big extent, and this is the most common cause of visceral disease, and it has a new world and old world form. Amastigote forms are found within the reticular endothelial cells of the viscera, like spleen, lymph node, liver, intestine. Incubation period is 10 days to a year. Symptoms are slow developing low-grade fever, generalized malaise, progressive wasting of the patient with anemia, and protrusion or distension of the abdomen, progressive hepatosplenomegaly. If left untreated, death will occur within 2 to 3 years contracting the infection. In acute forms, the disease can run its course within 6 to 12 months. Clinical signs include edema, particularly of the face, bleeding mucous membranes, breathing difficulties, and diarrhea. Okay, how we can diagnose a case of leishmaniasis? Basically, whenever there's cutaneous leishmaniasis, in the most of the cases, the diagnosis is clinical because first of all, you need to suspect a case, and for that suspicion, the patient is coming. You have to see from which area the patient is coming to you, and that particular area is prevalent for the disease of leishmaniasis. The geographical presence of parasite is very important. You should need to ask about the history of any bite or sandfly bite, if that particular area people can identify sandfly. Then the appearance of the skin lesion. The lesions should be chronic, painless, clean ulcers, nasopharyngeal lesions, and nodular lesions on the face and the arms that are sun-exposed areas particularly. Then after the suspicion, you can go for the demonstration of parasites by the scraping of the skin. You can visualize the parasites. You can isolate that parasite from that infected area, and then you can go for the culturing of parasites. Okay, then you can also detect, or you can also diagnose the disease by delayed hypersensitivity skin testing, or you can go for the serology of the Leishmania parasites. Okay, you can found amastigotes in skin scrapings, biopsy, and aspirates. You can go for in vitro culture of poor mastigotes, or hamsters you can inoculate. This is the ulcer of the cutaneous leishmaniasis. You have to, if you are going for the skin scraping or skin biopsy, so you should take incision from the active part of the ulcer, not from the dead part of the tissue. In that area, the parasite will not be visualized that much. You have to go for the skin scraping or biopsy from the active lesion. Okay, And see, this is a macrophage having A mastigoles by Gimsa staining. Okay, this is also a liver biopsy specimen showing macrophages, and this is having leishmania bodies. Excuse me. For visceral leishmaniasis diagnosis, same you have to follow. You have to make a suspicion that patient is coming to that particular endemic area, patient having long fever, history of sandfly bite, and having massive hepatosplenomegaly, and weight loss. You can find A mastigoles in bone marrow aspirates, or you can go for in vitro culture of aspirate, and you can go for the histological testing by direct agglutination testing or by the ELISA dipstick against the antibodies against the K39 antigen. Okay, after diagnosis, you should go for the treatment, because as early you start the treatment, the response will be that much good. The drug of choice for visceral leishmaniasis is pentavalent antimonial compounds, in which come injection sodium stibogluconate, and it comes by the name of Pentostan. You have to give intravascular, intramuscular injection, 20 milligram per kg body weight for 28 days. You can also, if patient is not responding to antimonial compounds, you can move for the injection pentamidine or injection amphotericin B. Pentamidine can be given as an intramuscular injection for 10 to 15 days, and amphotericin B is preferred in India, and the dose is given intravascular, 2 to 5 milligram per kg, once daily, and total 2 to 3 grams can be given. Injection parabomycin intravascular or IM 15 to 20 milligram per kg once daily for 21 days can also be given if the patient is not responding to above given therapy. You can also prescribe maltofosine orally 50 to 100 milligram per day for 28 days. Allopurinol can be given oral or IV 20 milligram per kg for 3 days. Okay, for cutaneous leishmaniasis, mostly ulcers heal within 6 months if the good hygienic control or the immunity response is maintained. The treatment depends on the species and the country of acquisition. Pentavalent antimonial compounds, intravascular or intramuscular 20 milligram per kg once daily for 10 to 20 days can be given. We can inject pentavalent intralesional as well to have expedite the response of the therapy. Pentamidine intravascular or intramuscular 3 milligram per kg for 4 doses or 2 milligram per kg for 7 doses can also be given in cutaneous leishmaniasis. If patient is not responding to antimonial compounds, you can go for the antifungals like amphotericin B, 0.5 to 1 milligram per kg once daily intravascular for 8 weeks. Oral fluconazole 200 milligram once daily or BD for 6 weeks. Ketoconazole 600 milligram per day for 28 days. Itraconazole 200 milligram BD for 28 days. And Dapsone can also be given 100 milligram BD for 6 weeks. Local or topical drug therapy is important in cutaneous leishmaniasis. Parabomycin ointment, methylbenzethonium chloride ointments play important role in the lesion, local application of the lesion. Intralesional injection of meglutamine antimoniate is also very helpful in certain areas. Non-drug therapy we can have local heat therapy or cryo or the cold cryotherapy is also available in some part of the areas. Okay, for mucocutaneous leishmaniasis, pentavalent antimony intravascular or intramuscular 20 milligram per kg once daily for 28 days. Amphotericin B intravascular 1 milligram per kg once daily. Pentamidine can be given intravascular 2 to 4 milligram per kg twice weekly for more than 15 doses, depending upon the response of the patient. Okay, how you can prevent or which strategies you can take to stop the transmission of these parasites. Interruption of transmission by reducing the vector population, or indoor residual insecticide use can also be helpful in the reducing the vector population. Early diagnosis and treatment is very helpful in the course of the leishmaniasis, or health education programs and the immunity enhancing strategies or healthy lifestyle education can also promote or play a role in the decreasing the number of the cases of leishmaniasis. Okay. Prognosis: the cutaneous leishmaniasis is rarely fatal, but leaves disfiguring scars. Visceral leishmaniasis, if left untreated and it's severe, it can cause fatal or it can increase mortality rate. Death and organ failure can lead to organ failure, and wasting syndrome can lead to death. Patient with HIV, treat HIV along with leishmaniasis to avoid relapses, because in HIV already immune response is weak. Patient can have again relapses or again the reactivation of the disease. You have to treat HIV along with the leishmaniasis if the patient is already having some immunocompromised disease. Okay, now we'll move to the cysticercosis. Okay, as you know, the cysticercosis is also a parasitic infestation or disease that is caused by the cystode or that is Taenia solium, or the tape. It's a tapeworm infestation. Okay. Cork tapeworm infection. Cysticercosis is the tissue infection with cysticercus or larval stage of Taenia solium. Taenia solium is also known as cork tapeworm, and it results in ingestion of Taenia solium eggs. The clinical syndrome caused by Taenia solium are categorized as either cysticercosis, cyst in various tissue including the brain, or taeniasis, intestinal tapeworm infection. So we have two types of the clinical syndrome: cysticercosis, in which there is a cyst in various tissues of the body like in brain and the muscles, or taeniasis, in which the infection is just localized to the intestines. So this is called intestinal tapeworm infection. Okay. Basically, infection is caused by the cork tapeworm. It's found in the muscles, heart, and the eyes, and also found in the brain. It is also called when it involves the brain, it's called neurocysticercosis. So it basically, the cysts grow, the parasites go, proglottids of the parasites go and infest in the muscles, brain, eyes, and heart tissue, and there they grow like from a cyst and mostly provide the mass effects in that particular area. Okay, this is roughly a pictorial representation of the life cycle of the cysticercosis or the cause of the Taenia solium infection. Basically, the egg is being shed in the stool. The bundle of tapeworm eggs pass into the environment by feces. Okay, and then from these particular environment, they acquired to the humans or pigs. If they eat food and water that is contaminated by eggs or by after infection. Then these go and inoculate into the muscle, brain tissue, eyes, and the heart muscle, and causes the formation of cysticerci. Okay. Here also, cysticerci can lodge in human tissue such as brain, eyes, and skeletal muscle. Humans acquire adult tapeworm infection by ingesting raw or undercooked meat with the cysticerci. Okay, and this is Taenia solium, the tapeworm infection. In this, the human is the primary host and the pig is the intermediate host. Okay, clinical presentation. Cysticercosis can involve skeletal muscles, subcutaneous tissue, eyes, the central nervous system, and other tissues of the body. Neurocysticercosis refers to CNS infection with Taenia solium. Neurocysticercosis, which is probably the most common parasitic infection of the CNS. Okay. Basically, the cysticerci also lodge in the subcutaneous tissue, and if it can appear as a lumps under the skin. In eyes, it can cause blurring or disturbed vision and detachment of the retina. If the cysticerci lodge in the brain, it causes seizures, headache, swelling of the brain, and death can also occur. This is the subcutaneous nodules because of cysticerci in the subcutaneous tissue. And when you go for the radiological of the X-rays of these particular area, this appear as a calcified nodules. These are cysticerci. Okay. Okay. Once the cysticerci is in the brain tissue, it's known as neurocysticercosis. The symptoms of cysticercosis when lodged in the brain includes seizures, elevated intracranial pressure, meningoencephalitis, psychiatric disorder, stroke, or radiculopathy or myelopathy if the spinal cord is involved. Symptoms are mainly due to mass effect, an inflammatory response, or obstruction of the foramina and ventricular system of the brain. Generally, the patient's history includes exposure to an area where the parasite is endemic and an adolescent or adult onset seizure disorder. Symptoms of hydrocephalus should raise concerns about extraparenchymal disease as well. Diagnostic criteria. We have absolute criteria for the diagnosis of cystic sarcosis, in which histological demonstration of the parasites on biopsy from the brain or spinal cord lesions, or visualization of subretinal cysticercus, or conclusive demonstration of scolex within a cystic lesion on neuroimaging studies. This is the absolute criteria. In the major neuroimaging criteria, cystic lesions without a discernible scolex should be there. There should be enhancing lesions on contrast neuroimaging like CT and MRI. For confirmatory neuroimaging criteria, you have to prescribe the cysticidal drug therapy, and you have to repeat the neuroimaging like CT, MRI, CT scan and MRI contrast. And if there is a resolution of the cystic lesion, this is the confirmative neuroimaging criteria. Spontaneous resolution of single small enhancing lesion can also be there. Migration of ventricular cysts documented on sequential neuroimaging studies can also be there. This is the confirmatory neuroimaging criteria for neurocystic sarcosis. For serological testing, we can go for the enzyme-linked immunoblood transfer blood assays can demonstrate serum or CSF anti-cysticercal antibodies. The findings in the serum are more sensitive than those in the CSF. Stool testing, we can go for stool testing. Stool examination for ova and parasites can occasionally be used to diagnose intestinal infection with Taenia solium. However, most people diagnosed with cystic sarcosis do not have viable Taenia solium tapeworm in their intestine, so eggs are not typically found. We can go for the imaging studies to diagnose cystic sarcosis. Neuroimaging with contrast enhanced CT scan or MRI is the mainstay of diagnosis. MRI is better for detecting intraventricular types and extraparenchymal disease and visualizing the scolex within the cysticercus. Fluid attenuation, inversion, recovery of flare sequences are particularly helpful for identifying associated edema in the scolex, because whenever there is embedding of that cysticerci in that area, the local inflammatory response will also activate, and this can cause local edema. The CT scanning is better for detecting intracerebral calcifications. Both modalities can reveal hydrocephalus and active intraparenchymal lesions. A ring-enhancing active lesion with surrounding edema is the second most common finding. A homogeneously enhancing lesion represents a dying larva. Calcified lesions are also common on CT scans. Okay, this is our CT scan brain showing calcified lesions, nodular lesions, because of cystic sarcosis. And this is because of neurocystic sarcosis. Cysticerci embedded in the brain parenchyma. Okay. Treatment. For asymptomatic cystic sarcosis, more than 80% of the patients with cystic sarcosis are asymptomatic. No evidence has shown that administering antiparasitic therapy for asymptomatic non-viable cysticercal lesions found incidentally in the brain is beneficial. Patients who are found to have cysticerci only in subcutaneous or intramuscular sites generally do not require specific therapy. Ocular cystic sarcosis who have extraocular muscle involvement may present with diplopia and recurrent eye pain. Treatment with albendazole and corticosteroids has proven to be beneficial. For intraocular cystic sarcosis, surgical removal is preferred over antiparasitic drug therapy. Okay, when patient is symptomatic, symptomatic therapy for neurocystic sarcosis should be the focus of initial and emergency management as follows. If patient is having seizures, then you have to prescribe anti-epileptic drug therapy in patients who are having seizures. You need to prescribe anti-inflammatory drugs or corticosteroids and methotrexate in patients with cerebral edema or the features of vasculitis, along with the anti-parasitic therapy. Shunt surgery, if there is hydrocephalus, you need to go for the shunt surgery, or the ventricular peritoneal shunt should be placed. Okay, prevention. Because this is a preventable disease, so the focus should be on the prevention of the disease more as compared to, obviously, there's a prevention is better than cure. Meat inspection has been effective at preventing transmission of tapeworms in developed countries, but obviously in the developing countries, it's still very unsuccessful. Thorough cooking of the meat is a primary prevention measure. Freezing at -5 degrees centigrade for 4 days, -15 degrees centigrade for 3 days, and -24 degrees centigrade for 1 day kills the cystic cerci in the meat. To avoid potential fecal-oral transmission or to reduce the risk of neurocysticercosis, individuals who are traveling to areas in which this disease is prevalent should observe the following guidelines. They should eat only fruits and vegetables that you have peeled yourself. Thoroughly wash all foods prior to ingestion, and maintain good personal hygiene and wash hands prior to food preparation. Okay, Jim. Thank you. Any question up till now? And if you can ask. You can ask on the chat if any questions you want to ask. Okay, someone has asked the mortality rate of visceral leishmaniasis. Obviously, if adequate treatment and the patient has came to you before the massive hepatosplenomegaly. Obviously, once there is a massive hepatosplenomegaly, that cannot be reversed back with the given treatment. Obviously, if there is early access to the treatment and early start of the treatment, we can stop the progression of the disease. But obviously, the damage that has occurred cannot be reversed back completely. Obviously, mortality is reduced if we start the treatment earliest as compared to those who have developed massive hepatosplenomegaly and then they reach to you for the treatment options. Okay, anything else? Okay. What is the differential diagnosis for visceral leishmaniasis? Okay. Basically, the presentation of visceral leishmaniasis is massive hepatosplenomegaly, fever, and weight loss. So obviously, the causes of hepatosplenomegaly, like massive, we have, depending upon the age of the patient presenting to you, we can keep hematological malignancy, myeloproliferative disorders. We can keep tuberculosis because it's very prevalent in our country. And if patient is coming to fever, weight loss, hepatosplenomegaly, you can think about that as well. And myelofibrosis is also a very good differential for the patient coming to you with the massive hepatosplenomegaly, and the storage disorder, depending upon the age patient is coming to you as a clinical presenting to you. Okay, someone has asked that we can be given yes, we can prescribe albendazole and praziquantel both for the cystic sarcosis. Because for albendazole, you have to give 28 days therapy, and praziquantel you can give 14 days therapy, and then you have to see the response of the patient. Okay, someone asked what about the differential? We can also give, okay, 1 minute. How would the ulcer be treated? Okay, as I told you, ulcers with the local antimonial administration ointments and plus intralesional administration of sodium stibogluconate can also be given to treat the ulcers of the cutaneous. In mucocutaneous leishmaniasis, if the damage has occurred and the mutilation or there is a mutilation of that particular area has occurred, so obviously that has to be treated with plastic surgery. It cannot be reversed only with the antimonial compounds or this antifungal therapy. That you have to call the plastic surgery team as well to intervene and to help your patient with the plastic surgery. That damage that has occurred or the mutilation that has occurred, you can reverse with that. Only the treatment cannot reverse that damage alone. That's why earlier start of the therapy is more important. And if the mutilation has occurred, that cannot be reversed with the intravascular and the local therapy. That you have to go for the plastic surgery therapy as well. Till what extent should we learn the geographical distribution of? Basically, the geographical distribution of leishmaniasis is only because the which type of species is prevalent in which part of the country. And obviously, we are living in India, Pakistan, so it's very important for us to know those species that are more prevalent in our particular area. So, you should know the major things in the geographical distribution, not the everything. Which most important species is prevalent in which part of the area. That is very important for you guys. And if you remember that, so obviously the treatment tailoring and the start of the therapy will be important for you guys. Okay, anything else? In Pakistan, the mostly patients coming from Balochistan and the Quetta areas, I have seen 2 to 3 cases or 4 cases even. 2 with the visceral leishmaniasis and 3 or 4. Basically, the mostly patient coming or contacting to the dermatology OPD, because mostly cutaneous and mucocutaneous presentation is more important. When there is a visceral leishmaniasis, that is coming through medical wards. So most patients approach to dermatology OPD. So in the derma OPD, the patient's flow is there because they have presented a case series of leishmaniasis, because mostly patient coming to us is from Balochistan, and their sandfly vector is present, and patient coming with a large non-healing ulcer with the rounded edges and the disfiguring of the face, and that is there for the years, and they are even not consulting to any particular physician, because in our country, obviously there's many areas in which we don't have any good medical setup. So they have to come or they have to travel long distances to reach a particular doctor who can identify what is basically going on. So basically, in cutaneous leishmaniasis, the clinical diagnosis or the visual appearance of the ulcer is very important to diagnose, and then scrapping of the ulcer. Okay, anything else? Okay. If there's no question, then we can leave the meeting. If anything else, you can ask. Recommended book, Davidson. So, obviously, Davidson is enough for at the level of like up 3rd year. It's like more than enough. Davidson, is a good book for you guys. If you study medicine from Davidson, so it's good. Davidson PK is very good for you guys. Okay. Okay. Anything else? What is proboscis? Okay. Basically, proboscis is the sandfly saliva in which the pouch in which sandfly saliva stools. When sandfly bites the host, this pouch get emptied into all the acromastogores comes in the saliva and transferred through that bite to the particular host. The proboscis is the salivary pouch of the sandfly. Okay. Okay, if there's no question, then we'll end this meeting. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you.